our hashtag is SportsCheckKBC. So straight to our first conversation, and this is about a conference that took place about 10 days ago, and it was at the Strathmore University, and it was a sports round table. Conversations have been held around this, and there are global summits, for example, one that is known as Sportal, where they go and converse about sport, business, especially from the sports side of it, which is a very big talking conversations. What were the outcomes of those conversations? And to do that, far left, I've got Richard Wanjoy. He's from the Strathmore University. He's a data scientist with them. Richard, welcome.
Thank you, Daniel.
And we've got the CEO of Icon Sports Marketing, Grace Kiragori, who was one of the panelists at that event. Grace, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll start with you, Richard. As after hosting this event, it was a one-day event where conversations were held. What were the experiences from you and from Strathmore's perspective of how the participants brought out the knowledge that you seek to find?
Thank you very much, Daniel, for hosting us once again. What we said when we were setting up the roundtable, or what we're trying to call the Sports Business and Innovation Hub within the Strathmore University, we look at the sports ecosystem and how it exists currently in the country. If you look at what the contribution is, it's less than 0.5% to the GDP. But if you look at the impact that that could have, if then we look at sports as a commercial and also social disruption, is that it can impact between 5 to 10%, if not more. What we did was that we started this conversation and we looked at the legal aspects, we looked at the commercialization, and we also had a bit of conversation with the sports media. Why we took those three stones as our foundation is because when we look at sports as is currently, we are grappling with a lot of legal issues. If you look at the different federations that we have, if you look at the commercialization aspects, a lot of teams are still struggling, getting sponsors, getting funding. If then now we go back to the coverage, as I was saying when we were last year, none of the media houses has a sports edition beyond the Saturday and Sunday weekend coverage. So that's
this is Monday.
This is Monday, and this is
the exception.
This is the exception to the rule, and we are grateful for that.
Yeah.
So when we look at all that, then all these aspects were covered, and the participants were quite vibrant and shared their own experiences and also what they need to see done in sports in the next couple of years.
Well, Grace, let's now first talk about this, and this is from the commercial aspect of it. Having worked in sports marketing, what are some of the things that, the conversations that you picked up and some of the contributions that you may have made to this?
Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's a brilliant opportunity for us to be able to showcase what the potential there is in sports. And I think that is what the forum or the roundtable at Strathmore aimed to amplify. That sports is not just a hobby. Sports is not just something we do. It's something we go and earn a living. And not only us, many people around the sports ecosystem are earning a living. But it is not structured. So the commercial sector, we don't necessarily are able to see, to reap the benefits. So we need to be able to categorize sports as a business. And what do I mean by that? If you're running a business, you wake up every morning, you have a business plan. Why are we as a country or as sports organizations not developing a strategic plan that can allow us to commercialize the business? A business plan, as a business person, who I am, which is what I am, I believe I can't wake up every day and have got no sense of where I'm going. So what I feel, what the conversations that we had on that day were able to bring out what the potential that there is in the sports industry, and then the challenges that are facing the sports industry, so that we are not able to fully commercialize. And for me, particularly, I was very keen on identifying that we must have a strategic plan as a country. And this strategic plan is where all other sports personalities and all sports individuals, everybody's doing their own small things here. But what if you were to plug into a bigger picture that drives the nation? That is what South Africa has done. South Africa has a strategic plan from 2020 to 2025. And they plug into that, and there is a constant review of how is everybody doing. So first and foremost, to start off this conversation for me would be the absence or the lack of a game plan. I mean, we need to develop. I think there is, but it is disjointed. What if you were able to harness all that? It turned into a beautiful business. Remember, the sports ecosystem is not just the athlete. it is we, including you, Homer, you're a business person in sports because you're benefiting from the sports sector because there's journalism. We're benefiting from the sports sector because there's marketing. He's benefiting from the sports sector because there's data. So it's an all-round photography, journalism, merchandising, branding. It's such a big ecosystem if you were only to harness it into a strategic direction.
Let me just pull in on something. You could just give us some insight into what you picked from what the South Africans have.
Yeah.
Knowing that they would focus on some key sports, I would pick straight off rugby, cricket,
and football.
And football.
Yes. And to some extent, golf.
And yes, and golf.
Yes.
Actually, golf is big there. It's big. They have their own. They have the Sunshine Tour.
Exactly.
So it's huge.
It's huge.
So what is it that they have done, and the review methods that they use?
So what the South African have done is, first and foremost, at the beginning of the 5-year strategic plan, is sit down and with each and every of them, identify the stakeholders in the sports sector. They've identified the stakeholders who are people from the business community, the federations of sports, the Ministry of Sports. Actually, I think they call it the Ministry of Arts, Culture. It's the same, almost the same duplication as ours, yeah? So what they do at the beginning is they invite so many of those stakeholders, and each stakeholder owns a part of the strategic plan. And therefore, after that, there's a reporting mechanism as to how are we doing with golf. Look at them, they look at it from a sports tourism, because it's really, really huge for them. They'll be looking at it as driving foreign direct investment, because people are coming in, there's accommodation, there's transport. So everybody in that ecosystem is reviewing. And every year, I think it's biannual, if I'm not wrong, I'll check, but it's biannual. There's a reporting mechanism of how are we plugging into the national plan as golf. How are we plugging into national plans as rugby? And therefore, and are there gaps that we can do to amplify it bigger? So the whole strategy is owned right from the sports athlete to the top level government and to all other stakeholders in the industry. And after 5 years, they'll meet again and review, and they'll be able to tell, because numbers don't lie. He's here as a data analyst. Money is in numbers. They will be seeing the volume of business trickling into the country, both directly and indirectly. They'll be looking at the social growth. They'll be looking at the economic growth. They'll be looking at how their sports have been developed, because they tie it into two aspects: the commercial part of the business and also sports for development.
All right. Richard, do you want to weigh in on that? Because when it comes to numbers, there is a book known as How to Lie with Statistics.
You can only lie so far with the numbers. And I'll give you perspective. In the last 3 to 5 years, the average sponsorship, sports sponsorship in this economy is between 3 to 5 billion. We can increase that if you look at the...
That is the entire sports. That is what is publicly available.
Publicly available.
Yeah.
But if you look at the pockets that Grace was talking about, that can extend all the way to 10 billion. And if you look at what the betting companies have done, there's a lot of opportunity and growth within that sports sector. Alluding to what Grace has just said, South Africa launched their development plan. Nigeria has also done the same, and they're coming big, because then they're doing even, not just the infrastructure. It's a whole game changer for them. Remember, Nigeria were big on football and a lot of these athletics and short distances,
yes.
But now they're coming with a wholesome document that they want, categorize sports that they can become strong in, and also leverage on that with their infrastructure and also the economy. So for us as a country, as Kenya, we are not yet there. We are saying that let's grab this opportunity. 60-year zone, we do not have a strategic plan, as what Grace has said. Can we structure something that can give us a perspective that we can say in the next 5 years, this is what Kenya can achieve? One, we can qualify for major regional and continental championships. Secondly, let's get the infrastructure right. And I think that's where the government has sort of put some 2 steps, but maybe 3 steps back. Commercial interests. If you look at all the corporates that we have currently, they have an inkling of sports sponsorship. But if we put the infrastructure right and we put the mechanisms in place, then they'll plug in big.
Yes, Grace.
I wanted to just mention that maybe in Kenya the strategic plan exists, but when we searched on the internet, the way you'll find Australia, the way you'll find South Africa, we will not find Kenya. So maybe this could also be a challenge to find, maybe the Ministry of Sport could be having a strategic document. The last document that reflects sports in Kenya is actually Vision 2030, and it is not updated. So we as participants, as stakeholders, could be aware that there could be an existing document that supports the strategic direction of sports in Kenya, but it's not available to us as the players. So maybe again a forum to ask the ministry. Mahoma, you could ask for us. You could ask for us.
I could ask for you. I can also refer you to the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto. There's actually a section where they talk about that, and infrastructure
Yes.
is part of it, and the Talanta Hela program.
Yeah.
But let me come to this, because we've, over the last 4 months, I mean, you always find some little drama tending to show up here and there when it comes to governance.
Yeah.
And as a go-between between probably the corporate world and a sporting entity, what is it that they say in between? Because I know governance was
Governance was a big. Okay, let me pick it from where we picked it last time. We were able to notice that in the entire sporting sector, actually, governance is a very big issue because of the election system, the overstaying of some of the governing, leaders, and the fact that the accounts or whatever are not made easily available or public. It makes it a governance issue. And what is the effect of that? Sponsors pull away. If you're a corporate, you want to work with a transparent organization, you want to see that they can audit the money that you give them, you want to see that they can account for every penny. But what you find is that this has become a deterrent for corporates or sponsors to want to go big time in sports and some of these federations. We've got sponsors who've pulled out from very, very, very big events that can drive this nation, events that can become brands. We've seen sponsors pulling away 100 million worth of sponsorship, pulling away from a federation or from a certain sports sector because of the fact that there was no transparency. So for us in that forum, as the stakeholders in the round table, we were reinforcing the fact that we cannot be sitting, the sports sector cannot be sitting there with open hands, waiting to receive, but they're not able to showcase what they're doing with the money. And that becomes a very big audit query. So I think in terms of that, I would amplify that. We can't separate ourselves from governance. We can't separate ourselves from systems and structures that drive a business. If you're a CEO of a business, like you rightfully called me, although I'm a founding director, I'm a founding director because the business is currently on ice after COVID. However, it's important to say that as a person driving the business, you must be responsible, and the buck stops with you. But do we have that responsibility as leaders in the sports sector? That I do not want to be on air saying yes or no, but it's out there. We are having very, very, very many wrangles.
Richard, let me just say, what was, from the federations, what is it that they were saying? Because I think some time back, Cabinet Secretary Ababu Namwamba had a conversation with federation people, especially those that are tied to the Olympics. Yeah. And he simply said, we can't afford to have fights. You can't be coming to fight in my office. Openly, in front of him.
So interesting, we invited over 15 sports federations, the major ones. Only one honored our invite.
Which federation?
Kenya Rugby Union,
okay.
Represented by none other than the president, Sasha Mutai, who stayed with us for the bigger portion of that session.
So 14 did not show up?
14 didn't show up. One responded, but they never actualized the invitation, because then they just responded that they had received the invitation. So we expected they would show up. So that, again, reflects on what we are talking about. If you're not ready to be queried, if you're not ready to be open about your affairs, then don't expect any support either from corporate or from the government. Yeah. And remember, we have over 35 sports federations. And I think there are even more if you count the
35 are the Olympic
affiliated
federations are 36.
36. If you look at then the ecosystem, is that all these, at least half of those should have come in. Because what we're telling them, be open for scrutiny, be open to share what your ideals, what your goals as a federation are. Then we can plug in and tell you, this is where you need the business people. This is where you need academia to do your research, to do your data. Then now we can present a case and put this forward to the ministry or to the relevant stakeholders to build upon that.
Let's talk, amongst the other things that people want, and we're seeing this, fun engagement. Yeah. Because the sports business is purely, it's considered entertainment. Yeah. How is the fun engagement numbers that you see here? For example, I will tell you, athletics, big sport, but at times,
no numbers.
The numbers on the seats are not there. Football, not performing very well, but you will know, if I go to this event, it's packed. What's being done around that?
for me to go?
Yeah, Grace.
Yeah, this was another very topical issue during the roundtable. Why? Because we are saying we want to develop sports, but we have to also develop the experience for those coming to be spectators. And I quote a very big example of how the US drives spectatorship. You find they have, it's a party, it's called tailgating. They have the before party and everybody in that town, if the game is happening, say, in Boston, the engagement is very heavy and everyone will line up to support their fans. It doesn't matter. We will have a game here or an athletic event, but we won't have those numbers. Why? Because we've also not developed a strategic direction on how we are going to engage our fans. Fans don't just show up. Fans come for an experience, fans come for entertainment, fans come to cheer you. But you who is a federation, what plan have you put in place? Like how accessible are our tickets? How do our stadiums or environment where they're going to come and sit look like? You hear people complaining of basic amenities not lacking in our infrastructure. Again, we come back to infrastructure. Who wants to go to a place where there are no toilets, all those things? I'm just used to it as one of them, but there are very many other things that can make you, as a fan, not want to go. Security of yourself. So you find that if we are going to match the fan experience experienced by other people who attend all other international games, what have they done what can we borrow from them that we can do in Kenya? And that is what, again, could be lacking. Like if I want to say, I want to come and, like for instance, why was the Kipchoge Classic not filled to capacity? It's an athletic event where everybody should have been present. So are we developing a culture of it's ours and we want to have it? It has to be part of the strategic plan. I'm coming back to say that you don't just sit there and put a game and expect fans to come. What is the experience? What are they going to take? Remember, they've come to watch the game, to cheer, but there's something else, because you can't separate sports and entertainment. You can't separate sports from a spectator experience. That is what I think we have not maximized. We have not developed it to the fully.
Okay, because that now comes down to a case of communication. Where a federation tends to rely on their sponsors for communication. Yeah. We have seen that. And when they try to do it themselves, when you rely on people who've got the hype, who can do the hype, social media, they can use traditional mainstream media or other disruptors. At what risk are these federations? I'll use the Safari Sevens as a case in point.
Interesting, because she's a former Safari Sevens organizer, so she'll share her case. Yeah. But I'll start from your question. If you look at our sports...
Actually, I can use specific years, 2013 and 2014. Same venue, Kasarani. Yeah. One without the sponsors' noise, the other with the sponsors' noise.
Yeah.
Interesting. So if you look at sports federation, you have to own your narrative.
Yeah.
I think Kenya Rugby, maybe Athletics Kenya, those are the two main ones that I see doing their own content, and maybe now the National Olympics Committee. Most of the other federations, you look for basic information like current players, national selection, a database of their players. That data is missing, and that is very basic information that you can have either an intern or someone enter for you. So if you look at our sports federations, if then you can't own your own database or information that you have of the registered clubs, the registered personnel that are working or engaging in that sport, then don't go to a sponsor and tell them this is the visibility that I'll give you in case I propose an event. We talked about the Kipkeino Classic. I was in that stadium for that event. Yeah. First of all, the logistics were all messed up because then accessing the stadium, it was a nightmare. Secondly, they did not factor in the elements. And I think by the time the 100 meters race was happening, it was all helter-skelter because of the...
I was there. Actually, I was there. I know what... The rain chose the correct time, 5:45 p.m.
Exactly.
To disrupt the event.
Yes.
And I've done this 3 years consecutively. It has become a family favorite for us. So if you look at that experience, you as a federation, are you making me, Richard, to go out to the stadium to enjoy these experiences? Because then it becomes a family tradition. It becomes a place that I can call my friends and tell them, let's catch up at the Sevens. Let's catch up at Kenya Open. Let's catch up at the Kipkeino Classic. So if then, as a federation, you're not doing anything, first of all, to just work on your basics, then don't expect anyone else to come and clean your house for you.
And maybe to add on that is to remember the marketing element. Remember, I'm heavy on sports marketing. The marketing, you build a brand. And a brand has a promise. What are you promising to come? So if you say you're building a brand like Safari Sevens, then I expect some... when we began the Safari Sevens as a brand, there was some engagement of the funds by the Rugby Ministry of Rugby, people who build the brand. But when the federations disrupt that, and you break the brand, rebuilding a brand, you have to do a rebranding strategy. So once you break a brand, you kill it. So is there a mechanism for us to build a brand and build this such that if I think Safari Sevens, I think fun, I think patriotism, I think Kenya Rugby Sevens, I think I'm going to see some awesome rugby, the Fiji is coming. There was some fundamentals that brand had shaped up. And the same happens to Magical Kenya. If you, and it's a brand.
Yes.
Look at World Rally's...
WRC, the World Rally Champion, the Safari Rally.
Exactly. What has happened, Vasha has become a sudden craze. Why? Somebody is building some communication around it and hyping it. But if we don't do that and we sit back as federation and expect only the sponsors, it won't work.
And now, okay, let me give Richard some numbers to go, think about. First of all, it was said that in 2021, when the rally went there, Safaricom picked up 30,000 people who had never been to Naivasha.
I can give you a good example. I was at the spectator stage at Kasarani. We had between 50 to 100,000 spectators. Kasarani spectator stage. And if you look at, if you get the coverage, especially if you get the chopper, that experience, even for me, I was like,
in awe.
We had guys driving all the way from Kampala, coming to see the safari.
Do you know they were brought in by Magical Kenya? 3 buses.
Wow. Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
So if you look at that ecosystem, and now you go now to Naivasha. Naivasha, I went as well. I was there for 2 nights. You look at the activations that happened in that town. I think people slept for between 8 to 12 hours maximum, because you're waking up, the next thing you're in an activation, you're moving to the next joint.
Yeah.
There was traffic.
Strategy.
From, I think from on your way to Olkaria, the whole like 2 or 3 days. So that just creates that verve and that energetic feel about an event. And if you look at, for example, that you've said the safari, Las Vegas last year hosted the F1. By the time they were done, 3 months after the event, they were out with a report first to cover the business element, just the impact on the business environment, the impact on the infrastructure within the city, because then they were
using the streets.
Yes, they were using the streets.
Exactly.
They were forced to do a new driveway.
Exactly.
If you look at the impact on the environment, all those things, so they are able to give that information in very good detail. I can send that report to you.
Yeah.
Are we able to do that for the safari here in Kenya?
Actually, I believe one exists. I think we'll talk to Charles Gashero now.
If Las Vegas can,
Yeah.
if Las Vegas can give us the report in 3 months, why can't we get for the safari in 1?
We'll get that one. Now, the other one that is coming up is technology. It's disrupted
Yeah.
the whole sports ecosystem. Every federation now has moved, not just Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, they're moving to TikTok. What's this disruption that's happening?
So again, I think everything is interconnected, and I remember this is what the message Sasha gave us when he was leaving. If you look at your fans, what are your average fans' age right now? Ages between 18, maybe even lower, 15 to 30, 35. You and I are pensioners in this space. If you look at that age group, if you look at that age group, most of them are on TikTok. So then you have to appeal to that audience. I'll give you an example as a university. The way we launched our TikTok channel, it's someone who vented against the statutes that we have as a university. And that gave us credits to be able to get to that platform, because our audience of people who are coming to the university are between the ages of 18 to 22. And what are they doing? They're basically on TikTok. So you have to provide communication, or you have to provide some sort of engagement that they can have with that platform. So it's the same for our sports federation. You have to look at the social media platforms that you have to engage with.
Exactly.
If you do TikTok, that's for fun engagement. If you do LinkedIn, that's for corporate engagement. If you look at Twitter, that's for the masses, or maybe breaking stories. So you have to have a comprehensive structure, a plan, again, as we talk about. You cannot do these things, haphazardly.
Solution, yeah.
Challenge to National Olympics. We are headed to the Olympics in a month and a half. Do we have all our athletes on social media?
Yeah.
Okay, somebody from NOC is coming, so I'll tell them that. but you also have to, and okay, then how do you break through some of the cultural barriers? Because we know that some of our athletes are extremely reserved. there are those who engage. They've got the social media platforms, but Omanyala can go noisy at any point.
Yeah.
Eliud Kipchoge's team does
his communication
for him. But how, Kenya Sevens, they've got the KRU, they do that for them.
Very well.
Very well. How do you optimize this? And there's the new space, online, which is actually disrupting any other advertising platform.
Yeah, maybe I can start. I think it is important for everyone to recognize that that's the way the world is going. You know, you cannot be left behind and expect. It's the same has happened to businesses. We once in a while were trading physically, taking documents. Now we do everything tender, everything we do it online. So if the businesses are moving to the technology, because that's where the new era is, it means you as an athlete have to move with the times. And I got people who are saying there's a cultural barrier, we are reserved. How do we break this? You don't have to do it yourself. Sports marketing allows you to look for an agent. You don't expect Kipchoge to be tweeting every minute. I mean, he's going to be running. He can't. He will do once in a while speak to media, but he has managed to engage. So I'm saying, what could I say when I'm trying to say that? Let other people do your business and you manage your business. Your business is running. And sometimes these athletes think it's expensive. It's not. We've got university interns who will help you tweet and create content for you because you're not a content creator. So how about if we let the athletes and the sports do what they need to do, but take advantage of the ecosystem around them and maximize. I was telling somebody, you do not need a professional marketer to help you or to be on social media. You just need a young mind, a very young mind, brilliant content, because they have understood the language, the lingua of social media. Let them give you that gap, and all you do is go run. And therefore, I'm saying Omanyala can do it. Eliud Kipchoge has done it, and he's done it very well. And maybe he's got the capacity to outsource. But even the other upcoming athlete, it is not costing money. You could even have, I even normally say, start with your own nephew or your cousin. Ask them, and then tell them, the minute I'll break barriers in terms of money, you'll be my first beneficiary. Let me tell you, because they have a lot of time on their hands, and they're on their gadgets. They will help create content for you. And that's where we all need to move. And also as federations, do we have a social media page? Do we have a place we can amplify our players? Do we have a place we can amplify what they're currently doing so that we push them even as they push themselves and as we support them to break the cultural barrier on social media? We just have to break it. I don't think we have a choice. The world is going this way. You can't be going backward.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, Richard.
Let me give you an example. In 2012, when David Rudisha was in London Olympics, for some odd reason, we had a gut feeling that he was going to break the world record. What happens to David Rudisha? He's not on social media. And if he's on social media, I think the last time his page had been updated was either a couple of weeks or a month.
He was an ambassador for the World Athletics event, yes.
Yeah.
So his visibility was so little. He got 3 or 4 major sponsors from the UK who wanted to carry his brand. But what happens? Because he has no social media presence, he has no visibility, they have to drop him. So what I'm saying is that is 12 years ago. Currently, if you're not on social media as a sports, the minute you have qualified to represent Kenya on the national team, the next thing you should be doing is opening social media pages. Have someone to update for you. I'll give the example of our Vice Chancellor, who's fairly older than most of us. He has visibility on social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok. He's regularly updating us on his VC run and telling us this is what I'm doing on a weekly basis, on a daily basis. So if you have that as an academic person, who are you as a sports person not to be on these platforms?
They say professors are dull, but that is different. All right, we'll be taking